So as we continue looking at our data of animals to see if there's a link or if there's a correlation or relationship between the age of the animals and the weeks to prove or disprove the statement that cuter animals get adopted quicker, and that younger animals get adopted quicker. Hopefully you've looked at the different ways we can measure center, the fact that we have visualizations that let us see quantities and visualizations that let us see frequencies. But what exactly is this column? What column is this question actually asking about? Well, if we look, the question is actually asking about two columns in our data set, specifically asking if there is a relationship between age and weeks. Fortunately, there are tools that let us visualize a two-column relationship, and that's what we're going to start working on. So open up your animals data set file. For each animal in the shelter, there are two data points we care about. We care about their age and their number of weeks it took to be adopted. We can use these points to plot each animal as a point on an XY axis. And eventually we'll have a whole cloud of points and see if we can find out about the relationship with our animals. So let's go to page 50 in our student workbook. And using the sample data here that we see, I want you to plot the age and the weeks, so age and weeks on this graph. So you're going to manually plot the difference, and then I want you to answer the questions that come along with page 50. Okay, so that's what you're going to do now. So at this point, I would hit pause in this video to take the time to fill out the graphs, the chart, scatter plot here, and answer the questions. And then when you're done, you can pick up on the video and we'll continue. As you can see in front of you now, this is the visualization that we're going to use is called Scatterplot. Pirate has two functions for making a scatter plot. One is just a scatter plot, which takes in a table and uses an X string and a Y string and produces an image. So that is one way you can create a scatter plot. The second way to create a scatter plot is essentially the same. The only difference is the function is called labeled scatter plot, where it takes in a table and it labels the string for X if you want the label to show up, and it'll allow you to plot the string for Y and produce an image. Both functions consume the table we want to visualize, as well as the columns we want to use, as XS for X string and YS for Y string. However, labeled scatterplot consumes another argument, which is a column that we will use to label each point. To make a scatter plot for our animals table, this is what we would write. So make a labeled scatter plot using the animals' names as labels. What happens when you hover over the points? So what I would like you to do now is I would like you to create a labeled scatter plot for the animals' names, using the animals' names as labels. Take a screenshot of that particular scatter plot and put that into your Google Doc that you are now calling Unit 7. So you can do that now, and you'll probably want to press pause. So as we continue, we're going to create a scatter plot, a labeled scatter plot that will show not only the X and Y of the weeks, age versus weeks, but also I'm going to add the label as being the name of the animal as well. So the function that we're going to write, and we're going to do this all in our interactions side right now, but the function that we're going to create is a labeled scatter plot. And we want to take in an animals table. And we want the first string to represent what the label will be when we actually create our scatter plot. And that's I would like to see the animal's name. And then the second string, and we go back to our instructions here, and it's asking us to use age and then weeks. So that's what we'll go back to doing. So we'll work with age as our X and weeks as our y. And once we've done that, if you notice, it's going to be an error because I spelled animals wrong. So now I will spell animals right, and then I will run by hitting enter. And now I've created my scatter plot looking at age versus weeks. And we can tell that we might have a few outliers with our data. So the first outlier I see here, if I float my mouse over, is we're looking at Cujo. Now Cujo, because we know that 8 is the X and the X is actually age. Cujo is 8 years old, and it took Cujo 30 weeks to be adopted. That would be considered an outlier because it's not anywhere close to our clustered data. Another outlier may potentially also be Felix. Now Felix we see is 16 years old, and it took 5 weeks for Felix to be adopted. So that could potentially be an outlier as well. So this is what you will want to take a screenshot of and put into your Google Doc. Once you've taken your screenshot, make sure that you are writing 2 sentences that talks about the scatter plot and also answer the question, what happens when you hover over the points?